All right. Well, welcome to episode 8 of the Thriving Life podcast, a podcast designed to help you not just survive, but thrive the challenges of life, leadership, and faith. We're so glad to have you with us today. This is a special podcast. We're doing this through Zoom. We haven't done this before. And I have some special guests I'm going to introduce you to in just a second. But before we get to that, would you do me a favor? Would you just click the subscribe button on the podcast? Either subscribe to it or subscribe to our YouTube channel, wherever you're viewing this. That will help us to just send you the information. It'll notify you each time we post new content, and that would help us on our end. And it would also help us spread the content to other people, which, as always, we'd love for you to share if you find any of this helpful. Well, in honor of Mother's Day, this past weekend, I thought it would be appropriate for us to have a conversation with some of the most influential people in our lives, in our world, and specifically in our church here at Mission, our moms. So I want to introduce you to a few ladies that some of you may know, you may not know, but I want to introduce you to some of the moms of Mission, and here they come. This is Erin, and this is Carly, and Christina is coming up in just, there she is, and there's Christina. Thank you guys so much for being willing to do this.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. Did you guys have a good Mother's Day, first of all? Good Mother's Day?
Yes.
The day was good. The day after, aka the cleanup of Mother's Day.
Oh. Yeah.
Not so good.
Yeah, that was the one thing my wife said was, look, I want to enjoy Mother's Day, but I don't want to pay for it afterwards. Like, I don't want to have to be doing all the cleanup whenever. And I was like, okay, that's fair. That's fair. So I don't know. You'll have to ask her if I did a good job at that. Carly, love the t-shirt, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't share that one with my wife. You can't see the very bottom of it. It says, go ask your dad. So, but I would rather not see that one in my house. Hey, just introduce us. Tell us really quickly about you. Actually, we'll start with Erin, then we'll go to Carly, then we'll go to Christina.
My name is Erin. My husband and I have been married for 16 years. We have 3 kiddos. Ages 5 to 13. We've been at Mission for, I think, close to 11 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's us.
That's awesome. So a lot of you know Erin's husband, Kevin Reinheimer, who's one of the pastors on our staff.
Yeah.
Carly?
My name's Carly, and I am married to Matt, and we have been married. We'll celebrate 10 years of marriage next month. Our baby moon anniversary trip to Hawaii was just canceled this last week, so we're still like nursing our wounds over that. But
is it canceled or just postponed?
Well, so we've got a baby coming in August, so because of that, now it will be canceled until at least a year out. So, but we have 4 kids with a 5th on the way. Our oldest is 6. Our oldest 3 are all girls, followed by little 1-year-old Beckham, and then this little guy will be born sometime late July, early August, when it's feeling really nice.
At this point in the podcast, we are going to pause and pray for the Meyer family. At this point, you guys are my heroes. You're my heroes. It's awesome. Christina?
Christina Lang. My husband Brandon and I have been married 20 years. We grew up together in church, and have known each other for much longer than that. Let's see, we've got 6 kids, and the oldest is 17. He'll be a senior, and then our youngest is going to turn 10 this summer.
Wow. So that's awesome. We literally have the gamut of kids at home, from one on the way to one about leaving home. So we've sort of got everything in between. And so today, and we talked ahead of time, the goal of today was to gain a different perspective on this quarantine season. We are up front going to say this isn't about having all the answers. Like, this isn't like, hey, this is all the right things to do, but we want to have some real talk. And I invited these 3 ladies because they actually know each other pretty well. They're all highly connected at Mission. And I just thought it'd be fun. It might be a little dangerous, but it'll be fun to have a conversation. I told them they're going to probably start going, and I should just like exit and let them talk and hang out, and they can let me know when it's over. But we want to talk about lessons learned, best practices, and some things that maybe not just moms, but families are dealing with within this season. And a little bit of, what's next and where do we go from here? We'll get to that in just a few minutes. Let's start with an easy one. Tell me about some successes. Tell me some of your biggest successes, things in this season you would say, hey, that worked. Like that was an idea. I didn't know if that was going to work or if that was going to be good, but here's something we did and it was really a success for us.
You got that one, Erin?
I'll start out. I think one thing that really worked for me during this time was flexibility, which is absolutely not my nature. I'm planned, list maker, box checker, all that sort of thing.
I know one of them.
Yeah. But during this time of uncertainty, I found myself really trying to white knuckle and to really force a plan into something that was so uncertain. And really, by doing that, I was just making my family really frustrated. So I decided I have got to just kind of let it go. I've got to let things go and just take things day by day. I couldn't, plan out our summer vacation anymore. I just had to sit in the here and the now. And when I did that, I was able to create this margin for myself that I could focus in on where my family was at emotionally, mentally with this whole thing, because, it's stressful for my husband, it's stressful for my 5-year-old, and those look very different. And so I was freed up to be in tune to their needs mentally, emotionally, and just kind of roll with it. Good days, bad days, days we're really killing the online school game, and days we're just going to peace out today. So I had to learn to be flexible. I hope I can continue to do that past this.
That's awesome. That's really great. And you survived it.
So far.
That's a good point. It's not completely over.
One day at a time.
That's right. Christina, what about you?
For us, I'm similar to Erin, where I've got a lot of ducks in a row and I've got a lot of ducks. So it was a hard stop for us. And my initial reaction was anger, like, who's doing this to us? Like, I was a victim of the world or something. And so I knew if I was feeling anger, then what were my kids feeling? And for every single person in our home, there was a different reason to have a different emotion. And so my husband's also in healthcare, so that hit us in a whole different way.
Yeah,
and back in a long time, it seems like a long time ago, a few weeks ago when it all started, there was just so many question marks that we just didn't know what that was going to look like. So the stress of that on our home, and then my son in his junior year, his baseball season canceled. The, other son in his basketball season, just everything, it was like bad news for like 10 days. And I was pretty angry. And I had read an article that talked about that anger being a result of grief. And so I think one of the best things I did was allow my family to grieve. And I know in the beginning, people were kind of thinking that was weird, like, this is going to get back to normal right away. Why are we why the emotion? Why are we holding space for that? But I was like, no, there are a lot of emotions happening in my house. And so we're just going to take the time to grieve that. And so I let them list those out.
That's so good.
And then once they listed those, and we talked about them nightly for what seemed like days, the grief began to lessen and the gratefulness began to grow. And that list ended up being bigger than the grief list. And that has just really been a blossoming thing in our home that, kind of like Erin said, I don't want to lose that.
Yeah, that's really great. And so different, like so jumping from one to another, like, Carly, your kids are little, like they can't process like that. They don't know really what's going on. So it's sort of like you and Matt to like kind of deal with that. So tell us about that. What were some of your successes in the midst of that?
Yeah, I think for us in our stage of life and just how it impacted and hit us, that I look to Erin and Christina so much in so much of the examples that they have set, because their kids are older. So I'm trying to just wean off of them and get every single bit of their, expertise that I can, so that I'm setting us up really well for the future for our family. because I'm not good at drawing boundaries for myself personally. I will, no, yes, okay, we'll do it, I'll do it. And so what we were looking down the barrel of 5 nights a week that we had planned out for us, and our kids' schedules were suffering because of it. And because we have littles, that's a huge thing into their emotional well-being and into so much of who they are today was affected by their nightly routine that was not in place at all because of the fact that I did not know how to draw boundaries well for myself and for my family. And so that's something that I kind of got thrown into the deep end with having to draw boundaries first with my husband. He works a really stressful job that when they said it was work from home time, I had to say, not for you, it's not. We will all kill each other. His office does not have a door and it's right off of our playroom, which maybe was not the brightest idea when we set up our rooms in our home. But I had to tell him, you've got to ask HR if you can be the only person to go into your office, which they gladly allowed. And that has probably saved our marriage, our parenting, and his job at this point. And then I just had to learn how to kind of put on my big girl pants and let my voice be heard and allow my emotions to feel validated that, no, this is how I'm feeling and I'm not going to push that aside because ultimately my kids and their emotional well-being rest a lot in how their mama's doing every single day. And so I kind of had to fight for myself and what I knew to be emotional health for me, which was a clean home, that I could not live in chaos when I've got 4 kids who are very much warring against the daily routine of cleaning up and of keeping things clean. But ultimately I feel like when I look back over this season for me personally, this has been a huge answer to my prayer. Over a year of my prayers, both for scheduling and for grooves and for figuring things out. And then for me, transitioning home to be a stay-at-home mama 2 years ago was the scariest thing that God could have ever called me to do. And then on top of that, take away all of my things that I had set up, like the gym childcare or daycare with my kids, or just different things that I had set up that I was like, I'm terrified of being with them 24 hours a day. But now I'm stuck with them all day with absolutely no relief in my calendar, but I got to enjoy my kids for the first time maybe ever, because we weren't running around and we weren't going from play date to fill our schedule. We're just home and I get to get on the floor with them and get to play with them with nowhere to be and no end in sight. And it kind of changed my whole perspective of how I feel I will move forward with this. Is no, my kids are my priority right now. And that is a huge lesson that the Lord has. It took a quarantine for me to be able to feel confident in my parenting and in my mothering of them. And so we're all still alive, and that's a huge victory for the Meyer family.
Isn't it the kindness of God when all that stuff gets pulled away, there's somebody who's moved in right next door that's really a big help.
I wasn't gonna mention that because my parents just moved next door a year. We just celebrated 1 year, and that has literally, I mean, the Lord knew what he was doing.
That's cool.
That I needed them next
I
door.
believe that's true, and I believe that, I don't know. Everybody has their different thoughts on that, and I try not to over spiritualize things, but I don't want to under spiritualize it either. And,
right, absolutely.
God knew in this season what you would need. So let's talk real talk. Let's talk about challenges. Even if you have to tell a funny story on yourself, or there's no judgment here, and who cares? You don't have to actually face any of the people that are going to listen to this and talk to them. So it's just us talking. I was going to say us girls, but that doesn't really work. So it's just us talking. And tell me about the biggest challenges, or the biggest failure, or the biggest difficulty.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you can hear, but my landscapers are out front right now. So there's one challenge. I don't know. I think there's a lot of challenges. We had challenges in parenting. Our little guy did, early on, he really struggled, and he got into this cycle of good day, bad day, good day, bad day, more than what you could, do a candy reward or a sticker chart board, like some challenging behaviors. And for us, we had to really show a lot of grace in that. We had to breathe through the bad and celebrate all of the good, and know that, these behaviors, they were, more or less a way for him to communicate what he was feeling. And so we thankfully have a very wonderful small group that we could reach out to for prayer and just say, guys, I'm struggling. Like, could you just pray for us? And they diligently did. And also there's, people in our small group that have kiddos that maybe they're a little more challenging than some of the others. And so they could just say, we totally get it. And I felt so validated in that. And I didn't feel so alone. I didn't feel so isolated that, gosh, like, we're really not killing the parenting game during this quarantine. So that was super helpful. Another challenge for me personally, I'm an introvert, and I recharge in solitude, which is real hard to come by during quarantine. So I had to really up my communication game with my husband, and not just expect him to know where I'm at mentally, emotionally, at any point in the day. I had to really up my communication and say, hey, my battery is like really dwindling down. I just need some time to step back and recharge. And he was like, oh, totally, got you. Like, locked me in my room with a book and, announced that mommy was off limits. But I had to step into that communication with him. And then lastly, one that I don't think we really saw coming, we both have aging parents who are here locally. And so we had to step in to help with, just going to the grocery store and daily things. But they're so used to being so self-sufficient and so autonomous that it was this really delicate kind of navigation to get them to let us help them. I think they're our parents. They're so used to being there for their kids that it was kind of like, no, I can totally, go to the grocery store. Right. So navigating that was more of a challenge, and it was it was interesting for sure.
Yeah, that's good. Carly, what about you?
Yeah, even though I'm wearing a shirt that says "Go Ask Your Dad," I was just thinking about one night in particular that I was having a woe is me time, and our son had, struck every last nerve that he possibly could with me that day without napping. And by the end of the day, let's face it, we're all sunk, like we're exhausted. And all that I could think about was like what I wanted to do personally to fill myself back up. Like Aaron, I'm an introvert. And so for me, this quarantine thing hasn't been too much of a stretch as far as like recharging my batteries when I can get away, because I'm already in my home and that's my safe place and my happy place. For my husband, that's not his case at all. He would live out at every single place imaginable every single night of the week if it were up to him. And so I felt the Lord like put his hands on my shoulders and say, Carly, listen, right now you're thinking about yourself, but think about Matt for a second and how stressed he is, because his job became exponentially more crazy in this season for us. And I knew that for him, going to work 90 hours a week wasn't the way that was going to help recharge him. And so I had to put my selfish desires aside and set him up for a night that was like, as best as I knew how, texted my best friend and said, hey, would your husband be okay if Matt came over, went in the man cave at their house, just the two of them? We've been around no one, you've been around no one. Could the two of our husbands just get together for a night? And like, they both had their laptops, they both worked all night, but it was still something that he could do to see someone else's face besides mine for a couple of hours. But then another funny story was I was at, we've been cooking more than I've ever cooked in my entire life. And one of the nights in particular, our oldest, Raylan, who's 6, came outside. I was on the phone and she came outside and asked, Mommy, what's for dinner? This is not a shining moment for me.
How many times have you been asked that question?
Oh, 100 million somehow. Yeah. It has been on their minds. They are at the breakfast table asking what's for lunch. Like literally, it does not leave their minds. So she came out and asked me what's for dinner. And I very sassy said, nothing, Ray. We're not having anything for dinner. I am not making dinner. Figure it out yourself. Like, I was very sassy. And and she sauntered off away. I was out on the patio. She came back out a couple minutes later, and I just thought it was like handled, but whatever. She thought I was being sarcastic and whatever. And she goes, Mommy, how do I use the microwave? And I was like, why? What do you need? And I hung up the phone with my phone call and followed her inside to find that she had set out plates for all of her siblings. She had put cheese and strawberries and turkey and goldfish, and then she was heating up rotisserie chicken because she took me seriously.
That actually sounds like one of your best moments.
Well, yeah, exactly. Then I realized, wait a minute, you're old enough to figure this out, and you can actually pull your weight around here. Yeah, but the meals and making dinners and all of that, all while the grocery store is a terrifying place to be, has been a huge challenge for the Meyer family.
What about in the Lang household?
I think one of the biggest challenges has been wearing real clothes.
Yes.
Like
You forgot how to do that?
Yeah, I mean, every day I'm like, will you go put a pair of shorts on? Like, I have 5 sons. And so to them, it's like, they're good. I mean, shirts are literally gone. You know, for me, jeans are like a thought of last year. So I'm just kidding. But I would say teenagers have really been an interesting challenge in this time, because just like in life, every family has to do what works for them. And there's been a lot of families that haven't done things the same way we've done. And so we realized early on that, we're going to have to be the ones that are pretty extreme in this, and there's no sneaking out, and there's no seeing your friends, and there's no, like, that's just not going to happen. And those were some hard conversations, and thankfully we started a dialogue when our kids were early on that kind of the answer was, this is how Langs do it. That was just our thing. This is a Lang, this is Langs. So that dialogue carried through and just said, you know what, this is the way Langs are going to do quarantine. And that sufficed for them. But then because they're old enough to dialogue with me, the challenge has become a gateway to some amazing conversations where, you know, they're sad, they miss a friend, and then we can sit together and I can say, tell me why you miss that friend. You know, what value does that person bring to your life that you're missing right now? And let's talk about that. It's also been a good conversation of what friendships maybe aren't the best for them. And it's just, the challenge has presented another good conversation that's been happening. So it's been good.
It's good
That's
stuff.
really great. So, which is interesting. I don't know. I was going to get off on a tangent, but where our kids are just entering the teenage years. Like our 2 oldest are sort of really preteens, and I don't think there's been a temptation to like sneak out or something like that. But it has been interesting how they've turned to their siblings to some degree, and it was either sink or swim. They were either going to learn to play well to each other, play well with each other and have fun, or they were going to just be miserable. And like, at first I sort of wanted to control that a little bit and like, be like, look, if you can't do this, you're all going to go to your own rooms and, you're going to spend your day in your room all by yourselves. But we just kind of let them work it out. And they did, they figured it out. And it's really been great. In fact, my wife, if she was on here, she would tell you the best part about it is, with 4, like they occupy each other, and it's like, and she can find some space, because I have one of those too. Her Q word, by the way, is I need to be put in timeout.
That's good.
So like, she's like, before somebody gets hurt or I do something I regret, please put me in timeout. So so that's her way of saying I need my space. But our kids have missed their friends, especially our older ones, wanting to be around them. So that's definitely been challenging. We've been talking about rhythm on this podcast, a few different episodes. We've been talking about rhythm because I find that's one of the most challenging things for people. I think people don't realize when things change significantly in life, people find out whether they had a good rhythm or a bad one.
Yeah.
And just because you had a good one doesn't mean you'll figure out how to have another good one. And if you had a bad one, it's almost kind of good, because it's like, well, here's another chance to learn how to try to get into a healthy. So just talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how have things obviously changed? You've already talked a little bit about that, you know, having your kids home all the time. Like for all of you, that was new. You know, so like, how does that change rhythm with, you know, family and your, you know, work schedules and things like that? How have you done and what have you done to find a healthy rhythm for yourself?
I think for us, it forced me, I was in that ladder camp that you talked about, that we didn't have a great rhythm heading into this. And so I realized, and again, I said this was an answer to prayer for us. I knew that this was going to be a time for us that I could either look back on it and see it as an epic failure in my ability to finally come to what I had been praying for so long, which was just a healthy rhythm for our family. Or I was going to come out victorious and was going to come out having had set some really good things in place for our family and for our kids, since they are so young. Moving forward, this is what it looks like. And I feel like the Langs have that so established that this is the Lang way and this is the Langs. And I love that and look to that. And for us, I realized that if I set myself up the night before for my next day would go so much more smoothly. I realized for a lot of my Enneagram 1 friends, or, you know, the other Enneagram numbers, that they're like, duh, Carly, like that's something we figured out when we were 15. But for me, this is something that it took this amount of a like disaster to have me figure out, oh, if I prep coffee the night before, when I wake up, all I have to do is push brew and then I've got a hot cup of coffee instead of, you know, whatever. But for us, the days look so much better when I can wake up before my kids, which is early, when I can have some time with the Lord, and even bonus, if I can go for a walk before they even get out of bed. And then when they come downstairs and I am already awake and fresh and ready for their faces to come down, it is so much better off for us than if they're up first and if they rouse me first and then the first thing they see is a really angry mommy. It's better for us. And then we head straight into our rhythms of how we've set up school, which is one of them. The one who is in school is doing her school while the other two are taking their little preschool books and their little things that I have prepared for them or my mom has prepared for them. And then my son is in his play yard playing by himself, learning how to play independently. And we've just set up this rhythm that now it just works and my days feel so much more structured and so much less chaotic for us. And then, you know, like I said, for me, spending daily time with the Lord is absolutely vital, because without him, I am a beast of a human that my kids don't want to deal with, that I don't like, that my husband doesn't like. I mean, he loves, but I need to spend that day, every single day.
Are two different things.
Oh, yeah, yes, they are. They are. And I have worship music playing in my home all the time in various rooms. That is just important to set the undertone of how our house feels when you walk in. I've got my diffuser going 24/7 and my worship music playing all the time, because at least that can kind of drown out the sounds of the screams sometimes.
Ish.
My best attempt.
That's good. Christina, what about you?
Well, I don't know if anyone who's listening to this remembers, there was a blogger who put out in the very beginning this color-coded schedule that like went viral, and it was everywhere, of all these moms who had never homeschooled before. And her goal was to like, oh, don't worry, it's not that hard. Here's a schedule, just follow this. And it was like scheduled by the half hour, all color-coded per family member. And it like, even just looking at it, and I'm the Enneagram 1 that Carly's talking about, but I think because my life was so scheduled, like literally no room for error on either end of the margin, all of a sudden, once I got through my anger portion of the quarantine, I was like, oh my gosh, I can lower the bar and breathe for the first time. And so the way that we have managed it, our rhythm has literally been like a lowering of the bar. You know, Brandon and I are very much like high energy and get stuff done, and there's no time to rest. And I didn't realize how much we all needed rest. And so just just dialing it down, and every day dialing it down and getting to a place where I don't feel guilty for sitting down, which is embarrassing to say that I did feel guilty for sitting down. So I would say our rhythm has literally been rest.
Wow, that's great. That's
so
really
good,
cool.
Christina. Yeah,
Aaron?
I mean, I agree with Christina. I wanted that color-coded schedule so desperately. I did. But I mean, let's be real, like 8 a.m. yoga with an 11-year-old boy was not going to happen. No one's going to be happy about that. So we just sort of did what was going to work for us. And we just took a real easy approach. And we brought some of the things that we did pre-COVID with us. You know, I still play jazz music during dinner. We still have tacos on Tuesday. We still have the same family values. And then we just added in some new elements. We, impromptu walks when we're a little cranky, and family game nights. Tried to convince the kids to learn something new. And kind of like Harley, my time with the Lord is paramount. The guidance of the Holy Spirit and being able to pray for others is that daily act of worship for myself, but it looks very different now. I took the Devo that I had been reading that was supposed to take me through December, and I just ditched it for something else. And the box checker in me would never have done that. Like, we started, we got to complete that.
That's right.
And the prayer and worship nights on Tuesday have really guided my prayer life. I am praying for people that I really don't know. And for me, it was so
cool.
eye-opening to see
Gives me chills.
the church in a bigger respect,
So good.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's been powerful for me too. There's so many people I just never would have been able to interact with previously had it not been for the prayer and worship nights. And so that's really cool. So I have to say this one thing. It's funny too, Carly, you were talking about the night before, but we also have found like how you start the day. Like Jen's like giving the kids, like, instead of like, we're going to start the military and wake them up in the morning and get going. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you some time to do your stuff in the morning. And there's a couple of things you have to have done by this time. And she's doing a 9 o'clock meeting every day. So by the 9 o'clock meeting, you have to have, brushed your teeth, put on some clothes. Like, you're not in your pajamas, it's so this, these are on school days. And so the kids at the beginning were really excited about it, and they sort of rose to the occasion, and they were part of it. And, it starts to trail off for a while. It gets to the point where it's like every day she's like, did you guys brush your teeth? And it's like either no one or one person has brushed their teeth by 9 o'clock in the morning. And so she'd be like, all right, go, do it. We'll come back. And then I think yesterday or the day before, she started, now the consequences, they have to do burpees. So now it's like, if you show up and you don't have your teeth brushed, you're doing burpees.
Yeah.
So, and literally they were all complaining about it yesterday. I just walked downstairs as they were starting to do burpees upstairs. I was like,
that's right. That's Lang Gang
start
style.
your day off right, or you get in trouble.
That is the Lang way.
That's the Lang way.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Right. The Lang way. You should copyright that. That's good. So couple of things before we wrap up. May 15th is coming. Just give me your quick, like, what's your reaction to that? Like, I mean, May 15th is coming, and none of us really know exactly what that holds. I mean, that's a couple of days away, and it's like, now what? Like, there's restaurants open and like things, your kids activities. Like, I know for us, like soccer and dance, like they're starting to reschedule. Like, what is it? How do you feel about, as a mom, how does that strike you? How do you feel about that? Given where we are? Nobody wants to go first.
I feel like I'm almost already like taking like the defensive stance, because I know that these boundaries that we have set in place are going to be immediately tested. I think we're going to be bombarded with advertisements that tell us like we need to spend all of this money. I think our bosses or our business coworkers, they're going to wonder, are we coming back? Are we going back to being on call for them 24/7? And even our friends, I think they're going to really challenge the boundary that we have set in place. We have family commitments. We're going to have family nights. And I think that's even going to be tested by, you know, just a simple, hey, come out to dinner with us. We haven't seen you in forever. And are we gonna hold to our boundary that no, that night doesn't work for us. This is family night, or hey, we have this margin of time set up, so I'm not going to be answering work calls after, you know, this time. Are we going to accept that we really like having that extra cushion in our bank accounts? Or are we going to go back to maybe that impromptu overspending that we maybe had before? So I feel like I've already kind of taken like the defensive stance of like, these are our boundaries now. We're not going back to the way it was. So I don't know. I'm almost like,
that's good. That's what I was looking for.
Fight.
Like, no, that's good. I was looking for like, what's your real time? Like, how are you feeling? Christina, what about you?
Yeah, geez, like I said, our house, like the best way to describe our life before was it was loud. It was just noisy. Just the chaos of life is just loud. And this quarantine has just quieted everything down. And I've really leaned into the fact that that peace has really been healing in our home in a way that I didn't even know we needed it. You know, I've been having conversations with my kids I never even knew I needed to have. I hate to say, like, people don't agree with me, but boredom has equaled a blessing in our home in so many ways. And I'm not in a rush to get back to the overscheduled, loud, chaotic, everyone's going a different way, I'm texting to see who's home for dinner before I cook lifestyle. I'm really just not ready to just release, even though, you know, some of that is just real life. Let's be real, that's just real life. But admittedly, I'm not ready to just dive right in. And part of my rest has been a posture of listening and just receiving and learning. And, you know, maybe it's my human nature, but I don't feel like I've learned all that I need to learn yet. And so I feel like I'm like final exam right now. Like, what else do I need to learn, God, before the doors open up and I lose my kids to the world? And I mean, it's a little extreme. But
I think we can relate to that somewhat. You know, it's like the pendulum was over here and it swung so hard when all this happened. And it's like, well, I don't want it to go all the way back over there. And so it's like, how do I keep that from like not going too far that way, you know? So I can relate to that.
Yeah. I'm just not ready to rush back to that life that we had, even though there were so many things about it that were so rich and good and things that I'm really proud of. I want to ease back in.
That's good. Carly?
I think one thing that's nice about it being May 15th when we do go back is that now summer is in session for school, and that'll immediately die down a lot of that noise and a lot of that scheduling and overscheduling. Is that so much of this it's now done, and now we're looking at down the barrel of summer, and that's exciting to see that almost as soon as we now open back up, now schools are released, and so now we can just enjoy. And I think, Erin, what I respect so much about what you said is that now you're going to look down and say, all right, you know, we're being asked to do this on this night, but it's a family night. Are we going to guard and protect that night and that time? And I think the best way that I know how to do that is to have a family meeting. That, Joel, your family may do that every day, but we're proud to say we do it on Sunday afternoons. And that to me is like, yes, we have a family meeting. And it feels like such a win. But to sit our family down and
don't get too high opinion of this family meeting. It's like 9 o'clock. Here's what today looks like. Let's pray. Get going. Right? So that type of thing.
But still, it's a good recalibrator. And I think for us, it'll look like mainly Matt and me, because we're the main two decision makers in the ages of our family. But just making sure that we have got, maybe even writing them down and getting it down on paper so that we can say, look, this is something that's coming up against our values that we have set or our schedule that we have set. And it's just a non-issue. It's just a no. And it makes it really easy because we have set these guidelines in place that family dinner is every Thursday at my parents' house. And anything that comes up against that is a very easy no. Small group night is Sunday night, or now moving to maybe Wednesdays, girls. And therefore every other night against that, every other plan against that is just a no. But I think even as far as like re-entering society, I have friends on so much opposing beliefs about whether they're ever going to go back into a store again or whether they're going to eat. You know, I've got people everywhere, and just respecting and just allowing those parents of that family to say, no, we're not there yet. No, I'm not okay to have a play date yet. And I feel like I've kind of been proud of myself to say we're a family that probably will head back out as soon as we possibly can. In fact, we were at a restaurant last night. But I have the utmost respect.
Well, there's the answer to that.
I mean, I did get some looks for bringing 4 kids out in public, but for me, like, that's just where we're at, and we needed to get out of the house.
So it wasn't just you and Matt.
I mean, no, it was the whole fam. But I have all of the patience and the respect in the world for my friends who are saying, nope, we're not there yet, and we're not going to be rushing back into.
Well, and everybody has different circumstances. I think that's one of the big things, as I talk to people, and you guys, some of you may know this, but like, as we've kind of done some surveying of people in our church and how's everybody feel, like, it's literally like, if you saw the data, it's like right down the middle. Like half the people are so frustrated that everything isn't already open.
Right.
And the other half people are super anxious and concerned that we're just going to start the engine of this virus back up and it's going to go rampant again. And they're sort of fearful. And like, it's hard because, and this is funny because I didn't plan to talk about this, but like people on one side think the other group's perspective is stupid. Like most people, like, I mean, when you talk to people, it's like, they're so dogmatic. Like so many people are like, and it's funny because like my personality is like yours, Carly. Like I'm ready to like, I mean, let's go hang out. Like, let's go, whatever. And I probably shouldn't even say that. It's probably going to cause problems with people in our church, but I'll just say we can't, we can't, and we won't, because my 90-year-old grandmother lives with us. And like, the reality is like, it would be incredibly irresponsible for us. And so like, we have to, we've already chosen to, but we're going to be super cautious, and it's going to, and like, you not knowing that, like, if it's just so easy to judge somebody else and go like, you're fearful and you're whatever. And I'm going, no, I'm not fearful. Like I'm doing the same thing I would do, not bringing my grandmother near anyone who's sick, like for any type of sickness, because she's of this state she's in her life. So it's just really interesting. All right, we're going to have to wrap up in a minute, but I do want to get this last question. What's something like you're taking away? Like, this is something I've learned either about yourself or this season has taught you. And we talked about this last week in the series Rebooting Life, about the importance of memorializing. What are you going to memorialize? If you thought about how you're going to, that's great too. But what are you going to memorialize? And then like, and why? And what's the significance of that? What's the thing that you personally need to carry forward with you, and you need to take forward from this season?
So we play music basically all the time in our house, and our kids, I mean, they could probably sing from a song from any genre of music, just about. But during this time, the anthem song that is constantly played in our house has been Waymaker. And we're a little partial to the Passion 2020 version, say. But we have decided that we would print out either the lyrics or the sheet music from that song. And we're going to post them in our house and, frame them and whatever, just as that tangible reminder of that time that the world essentially stopped, but God was still at work. He was the one still making the way for us. And I just want them to take that throughout their life.
That's so cool. I love that. Who wants to follow that? I'm just kidding.
No, that's the best answer. But so we did one of those front porch pics where you all, the photographer was across the street, and then our family was all doing their thing. So definitely that's going to be framed and will be a symbolism. I think, watching my kids interact with each other, kind of how you said, your kids have become each other's best friends. We've always told our boys that, they will someday be so grateful that there's so many of them. And I think that someday became now. And I don't think every parent gets to see that. And I am so grateful that we've been a part of that, and watching the siblings need each other in a way that they've never needed each other before. And just falling into one another, holding each other up in grief, and having the black. I mean, I feel like I've moved into a men's dorm, and you know, the way they do things is really weird, but they love each other, and they do love each other. And I don't know the best way to memorialize that, except the blessing is too big to forget. So we're going to come up with something.
That's cool. Carly?
I love that. I think I'm staring at a sign that actually, Joel, you and Jen got me when Isley was born, that says your greatest contribution to the kingdom of God may not be something you do, but someone you raise. And I think that first portion of that was really easy for me to point to, because that's a tangible thing that you can say, look, I did this, but really their characters and their little souls are things that we're crafting right now. And it's such a huge significance that from here forward, I will never doubt my parenting again, and my mothering, and the fact that God gave these 5 children to Matt and to me to parent, not to anybody else. I'm going to start crying because that's what I do. But just, I made it really far. I'm really proud of myself.
You did. We're so proud.
Thank you. But just to trust.
I might be the next most likely to cry with you on this
that's
call.
True.
Actually,
that's true. You totally would be, Joel. You totally would be. Just to stand up on my own 2 feet and to finally, that this is what it took God to be able to get through to me, that you are the mom that I gave these kids, and that you can do this, and that I will not drop my kids off at the gym again. Well, I might, but like the fact that when I get them at the gym previous to this, it was like I was like crawling to the doors of the childcare because it was all I could do to get myself a break. And, you know, I just looked at it totally differently. And I think I look at my parenting and my mothering very differently than I did. And I don't foresee that changing. And if I do, I have this podcast to hold myself accountable that
you need to do something to memorialize that. You need maybe not literal stones, but you need a stack of stones that you can look at every day and go, because that is such a beautiful and powerful transformation in your own heart. And you will forget. I guarantee it. You will forget. There's gonna be days where you're like, everybody in the car, we're going to the gym. You know, it's like, this is that day. And having a reminder, you know, will be huge. Well, I just want to say thank you guys. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm close friends with all of your husbands, and appreciate all of them. They serve our church in amazing ways, all 3 of them. And your families are a big part of the fabric of the culture of our church. And so I'm grateful. And I think what often gets missed is your influence in that. And, you know, your influence in your families in this season and on other people, and your willingness to share your time today is, I think, a tremendous gift to us to church. And so I just want to say thank you. Thanks for joining me today on this. And thanks for being who you are. You guys are awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for asking us.
Appreciate it. Wow, that was an awesome conversation. I'm so grateful for those ladies who gave up their time. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the podcast. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do that. We look forward to seeing you online this weekend as we continue our Rebooting Life series. Carter's joining us again this weekend. We got a couple surprises for you also this weekend in our service. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.